Welcome, everybody, to Everyday Ethics. We have a great conversation for you today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us. And I hope you get a lot out of this indeed. I'm Michael Liebowitz, and my co host is the wonderful Persephone. And what we're going to do today, we do have a question to answer in the chat. Well, no, not in the chat. Persephone can explain where they come from. But either way, we have that, and then we're going to do something fun where Persephone is going to interrogate me and ask me questions. I have to switch this because I forgot to. There you go. I didn't actually forget to. I did it, and it switched back. I think when I click off, it does that. But either way, we don't want to get bogged down on that. Super chats, super stickers. That's our goal. Where are we right now? We're at about $50.
Yes,
I'll say so.
we are.
We're a third of the way there to the 150, but we only have 2 days left to get me to wear the
And we
headphones.
and we want that. We want Michael in cat ears.
That sounds well. Never mind. All right. So let me just address this question. So the question, let me put it in my own words. The question basically is, should we spend the time to think out the absolute best course of action for ourselves, or would it be better to act on a faster, easier decision if that would, an easier path if that would be in our own interest to do so? Uh, I I do think we don't want to get bogged down in analysis paralysis, right? What we want to be able to do is maximize our own self interest. And we're obviously not doing that if I'm spending all day on every decision that I have to make. I won't get anything done. And there are, there's heuristics, and also there's things that we learn from experience. I mean, for instance, I don't have to decide every day if I should be drinking cyanide or gasoline. I also don't have to decide if I should shovel dirt into my gas tank on my automobile. I know all these things, and I'm using deliberately extreme examples because I want to just illustrate the point that most of our actions are automatized. But we do need to consider some things, and I would suggest that the more impactful the decision is going to be, the more careful we want to be in making it. But that does not entail freezing ourselves from making all decisions. So at a certain point, yes, we do need to just act. I hope that answers the question. If not, ask me to clarify, and I will be happy to. Oh, look at this! Did you see this?
I did, but you were busy talking, so I
I
didn't
was
want to
busy.
interrupt
I
you.
was busy flapping my gums. Nicole Hingle, thank you so much for the super sticker. $20. Oh, we're almost halfway there. We are
Yeah,
almost halfway there.
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, guys. Michael in cat ears. Um, have you ever had a decision like that in your life where you had to choose between what was like fastest and easiest, or something that took a little bit more thinking?
I would imagine so. Nothing is immediately coming to mind. I mean, you make so many decisions every day. There have been decisions that I absolutely knew that I had to think out. I'll give you one. So when Brent McCall and I wrote our book, Down the Rabbit Hole, How the Culture of Corrections Encourages Crime, I was in the process of submitting for what is called a sentence modification. A sentence modification requires the prosecutor from the court. At this time, it doesn't any longer, but at the time, you actually had to get approval from the prosecutor of the court where you were sentenced. Now, I knew that by writing this book, we would be creating powerful enemies. There was no doubt about that. And I didn't want the prosecutor to be shocked into this, like he approves me and then someone says, "Are you aware, that this guy wrote this book?" So I knew that I had to talk to him about it. I also knew that it might affect me negatively. So I had to think about it. I had to consider, what do I do? Do I tell him or do I not tell him? Do I owe him that? And, I don't remember because this is now, 10 years ago. I don't remember how long the decision took, but I knew it was something that I had to grapple with, that I actually had to think through. And I decided, yes, I do need to tell him. I have to be straightforward with him. I cannot go in there and, have this guy blindsided. If he's going to grant me the sentence reduction, I want him to grant me the sentence reduction, knowing who I am and knowing what I've done.
I don't feel like that's the same thing. So
As
what
what?
as as this choosing between the easiest or
I
the
don't think so either. My only point was that I'm trying to think of decisions that required me to take a considerable amount of time to make. I don't, I know my values pretty well. So I usually know what to do. I don't have the option or a dilemma between choosing some fast route or some long drawn out route. I know it's when I don't know that I'm required to do a lot of thinking about the issue.
So one of the questions that I had for you, you sort of already touched on, kind of, right? If pursuing your highest value means sacrificing some other, like, smaller values, less important values, like, how do you evaluate whether that trade-off is rational?
I,
If
I don't view it as, first of all, I don't view it as a sacrifice, but I do understand the language. A sacrifice, in the way that I think about it, is where you give up a greater value for a lesser one. You're talking about foregoing a lesser value for a greater one. Obviously, my highest value is my own life, and everything needs to be measured against that. Now, I don't want to get us too bogged down, but there are scenarios where if I knew that I could not live the type of life that I wanted to live or that was best for me, like suppose the country got taken over by literal Nazis, right? And it was a dictatorship. And the human life was really not possible anymore. A rational life, value pursuit. Uh, in that case, I would just probably end it or fight until they killed me, because but that to me is a reinforcement of the idea that my life is my highest value. And if I'm not going to be able to live my life under my terms, under rational terms, then there's just no sense to live. But giving up a lesser value, like, do I want to have a cup of coffee? I love coffee. That's a value to me. But if I had to attend a function and I had to get there now, I would forgo the cup of coffee easily. But I wouldn't view that as a sacrifice. I would just giving up a lesser value for a greater value.
that makes sense. Um, I have a Google Doc next to me in case anybody's interested.
What do you mean a
So
Google Doc? What's that? What do you mean?
tech support with Persephone. Google Docs is like the Google version of Microsoft Word
Okay. But why do you have that? And why are
because I
they
have
interested?
because I have questions written down
Okay. On the Google Doc.
on the Google Doc,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
So if you notice me like looking off to the side, that's why, because I'm looking at a Google Doc. Um, how do you identify what your values are? Because yesterday we spoke about how, was it yesterday? Was it the day before? We were speaking about how all of this is not stuff that just happens automatically. It's actually work that you have to do.
So it started with I learned in a philosophy class when I was about 21 years old, maybe 22. Aristotle's law of non contradiction, that a thing can't both be and not be at the same time. That if you have two things contradict each other, two ideas contradict each other, one of them is not true. I resolved at that point that I would eliminate contradictions from my thinking. and that entails a commitment to reason. So once I make that decision, okay, I'm committed to reason, I'm committed to truth. Then I continued studying. So I value, in order to do that, I want to learn. I want to learn how to think. I value reason. What's going to help me reason? Well, so I got books, Being Logical, The Art of Argumentation, How to Think Straight, Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, various books that would help me think more clearly. Then it was, I wanted to learn what drew my interest. Well, economics drew my interest, psychology drew my interest. So I studied, a lot of that stuff. Now, at this point, I hadn't yet really encountered Ayn Rand's argument for rational selfishness. It was just a matter of what I happened to want, given that I wanted to learn and I wanted to be reasonable. So, but once I came across Ayn Rand and once I learned the idea of rational egoism, that my own life, meaning not just my biological existence, but my life as me, who I am as an entity with the potential for rationality, positive emotional experiences, that is my standard of value. So now I just assess things based on that. Now, there's some things that I naturally prefer, I naturally attracted to. It's almost like flavor, right? I don't choose what flavor ice cream I like. I happen to like it or I don't. But suppose like for instance, I don't choose to like heroin. That wasn't a choice I made. I like it very much. But in the case of ice cream, it's a temporary pleasure that causes very little damage, if not gone to excess. So I can do that. Notice both give me immediate pleasure. Neither did I choose to give me pleasure. It's just a natural fact of who I am. But one I assess causes me harm, the other I assess doesn't. So I'll do the one while I won't do the other. And, it flows from that. My taste in literature or my taste in clothing, whatever. You know what I mean? There's some things that I'm naturally attracted to, and then I have to assess, does this thing bother me, or is it good for me or not? And sometimes there's things that I naturally dislike, but I know are good for me to do. For instance, learning to be assertive. I hated it so much. Chose to do it anyway because I knew it was good for me. Being more extroverted, not my comfort zone at all, but I know that it's important to overcome my insecurities, so I train myself to do that.
That seems so weird to me that you weren't assertive or extroverted.
Well,
Just
because
given what I know about your past, it just seems odd to me that you weren't assertive or
well,
confident or extroverted.
okay.
Hello, baby.
First, say hello. Is she
I
adorable or what?
She is very adorable. What is her name? I can't remember.
Tayo.
Should
All right, here you
My
go.
my two are cuddling over there.
So it's interesting that you say that because so Subby types it out after I just answered the question. Uh, I recently spoke to a girl that I was friends with when I was a teenager. We were actually very, very, very close friends. I hadn't talked to her the whole time I was in prison, though. And I was talking to her the other day, and she remarked on the difference between how I was then and how I am now because she probably didn't know I was shy then because I was just me. But when you see who I am now, it's just vastly, vastly different. I no longer, when I was a teenager, I would see people and automatically think they were superior to me and think that they're better than me. And then I would be intimidated to speak in their presence. Now, if I was crossed, I would have no problem hurting them, whoever they were. But there's a big difference between being aggressive and willing to hurt somebody and actually being confident that you belong and that somebody's not your superior. In fact, I would argue it's the very inferiority that leads to the aggression to begin with.
So this is what I was going to say. So yesterday and the day before we were talking about self-esteem and how if you have high self-esteem, if someone corrects you or someone whatever, you don't fly into a tailspin. But when you were younger and you were more aggressive, that like low self-esteem, and now that your
Wicked,
self-esteem is
wicked,
higher.
wicked, wicked, absolutely wicked low self esteem. Low self esteem, when somebody's violent, though, you have to understand something. So it's a perfect storm. Low self esteem won't lead to the same results in everybody. So like my low self esteem led me to want to fit in, but with whom? And who was I going to act to placate, and who was I going to act to try to fit in with, was determined by other things, by values that I held, that I learned growing up. So whereas one person with low self-esteem, let's say a Peter Keating from the Fountainhead, he wants to fit in with the socialites. I wanted to fit in with the tough guys.
Mm.
You understand? So my low self-esteem led me toward that. But then there was also the anger. I naturally, I think, probably have a temper. My father had a temper. My mother had a temper. But the low self-esteem, I couldn't take it when I thought somebody was getting over on me, or I thought somebody was looking down on me. So I don't even, I'm going to, God, I don't know if I should share this, but I will anyways, because whatever, it's what I sort of do. But I once was driving with a friend of mine in a car in a bad neighborhood. As a matter of fact, ironically, we had just dropped off the very girl that I was just referencing who noticed the change in me. And, we're in the car, and I was carrying a gun on me. I often did. And we were sitting in a car. We were two white kids, and these two black kids pulled up next to us. And they were really giving us dirty looks for being white kids in, this neighborhood, whatever. And the friend that I was with made it a point to show weakness to them, to show deference. He said, "Oh, we don't want any problems. We don't want any problems." And they just looked at us like, "Yeah, that's what we thought. You didn't want any problems." My insecurity barometer went from 0 to 1,000 like this. And the first thought I had is, these guys are looking down at us as these white kids that they're just going to bully. And I knew I had a gun on me, so I just pulled out my gun and I just started shooting at these dudes in the car next to me. And it was all because of how insecure I was. It was all because I couldn't take that these two guys that I would never see again in my life and had never seen before then were looking down on me. And my friend said, we don't have any problems. And I said, well, I do. And my friend freaked out, oh my God. But the point of the matter is that is what low self-esteem can do. I couldn't take somebody having that type of view of me. My mother had a friend who was a drug addict, a gang member, had gotten out of prison. And it's from this guy one of the guys that I learned the importance of a firm handshake. But I was 18 years old. I'll never forget it. We were in my basement. And he told me, whenever you go to these, somebody's defeated you here. And at the time, it never really registered what he meant. But now I realize it. That if somebody's words or what somebody thinks about me can bring me to violence, that person is basically controlling me. I'm no longer controlling me. So I very much am defeated here, whether I want to admit it or not.
Yeah, there's a saying, I don't know if it's a saying, but that no one can make you feel anything.
Yes.
So if someone treats you badly in a relationship, then they shouldn't make you feel inferior because you're giving them the permission to make you feel.
Eleanor Roosevelt, there's a great quote. You might want to pull it up so we can get it accurate. But basically, she said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Yes.
And I think that is absolutely on point.
I think that is pretty much exactly the quote.
I really put this to the test in prison because I have had people say things to me in prison that there was a time would have gotten them really, really hurt badly. And the thing is, in prison, you have to understand something. People will run their mouths to you and then go take a shower or go put their headphones on and stare at at the typewriter typing. Meanwhile, I have access to adapters, a variety of things that can be deployed as a weapon. And what they're so they're not realizing, okay, you did that, but I knew in my in my own consciousness that I could have gotten to them easily. But I chose not to because I'm just not going to allow that to happen to me any longer. People are not going to control me with their thoughts or their words. I'm going to control me.
So Nicole Hingle has a great question, but James also asked, what's the importance of figuring out two things prior to making specific decisions, our principles and our hierarchy of personal values?
Okay, I don't know if he meant that as a question or a statement. I'm assuming a question because a question mark. What's the
What's the
importance of figuring out two things? Oh. Yeah, before making a decision, you have to understand your hierarchy of values and the principles that you're going to operate in order to achieve them. So, for instance, I don't have to reassess in each situation if I'm going to lie or not, if I'm going to steal or not. I don't have to assess if I'm going to use force against people or commit fraud, violate their rights, because that's contrary to my principles. So anything that's going to go contrary to my principles, I know immediately, no, I'm not doing that. Right? And if I know my hierarchy of values, then I understand, is this action going to destroy one of my higher values? Am I giving up a greater value for a less? So if I am giving up a greater value for a less, no, the action's ruled out. And am I violating my principles? If yes, the action's ruled out.
I mean, that makes sense. But Nicole also has a good question. Now that you've done so much work on yourself, how do you respond to men who behave the way that you used to?
I don't really come across them. And I would avoid them. But, if there was somebody that was at that stage but wanted help, I certainly would. I would engage them to try to help them to turn their lives around. But I would not want to just associate with them for nothing. And it's not a matter of feeling empathy, anger, or anything else. It's a matter of self-preservation. Why do I want to put myself in a situation where I'm at risk? I danced that dance for a quarter century in prison, being around people like that, where, everything sends them, can send someone flying off the handle. You never know, and you have to learn to be very astute at observing and communicating and how to de-escalate situations. So I would choose not to be around them. It's not a matter, I dislike people who are violating other people's rights as I dislike the person that I used to be. I'm not going to feel, I don't think, anger toward them. If they violated the rights or hurt somebody I cared about, I certainly would feel anger toward them. Empathy, not really. I mean, I could feel empathy for their suffering if they indeed have gone through suffering, but not for the way that they're choosing to handle it. I could have chose to deal with my suffering differently, and they can also choose to deal with their suffering differently.
Good answer.
So Subby makes a good point here, because this does aggravate the hell out of me, and I wish it didn't. But he said, the biggest issue I face is people who now treat me poorly, knowing they never would if he was the person he once was. That's absolutely correct. There was somebody, for instance, recently, an old friend, who told Subby that he recently had to put me in my place. There is not a planet in the solar system in which this dude would ever put me in my place. Never. It's not. It would never ever happen. The guy one time thought I was going to hit him at a we were at a hotel room, and he said something to me in a tone that hit my insecurity. He thought I was going to hit him, and his lips started literally quivering. But now, because he knows I'm not that guy anymore, he felt that he would tell Subby that he's going to put me in my place. And, there's a part of me deep inside that just says, like, why are you doing this now only because you can get away with it? Or, because they know they can get away with it. But that to me is just so cowardly. It really is. And, when people on social media, like when I used to be on the Todd Feinberg show, will say, "Oh, this guy's a scumbag criminal. He's this, he's that, he's this, he's that." But if you really believe that, if they really believed I was who I used to be, they would never do that. Because when I was that way, people didn't do that. I understand how people behave when they're actually afraid. I'll tell you later who it was, Danny. But when people know that you will hurt them, they act very differently. There was a guy in Subby. He knows this story. But when I was 16 years old, the guy, he was the toughest dude around in the South End of Hartford. Everybody knew that. He was 8 years older than me when I was 16. I weighed 140 pounds. He beat me for $900, meaning I gave him $900 for drugs. He took the $900. When I was 20 years old, I was probably going to kill him. And one time at a house, I forgot all about this, but a friend recently reminded me that he talked me out of it. I was drunk at a house. This guy was in the basement. I had a kitchen knife like about this long. And I was like, I'm going down the stairs. And he said, Mike, don't do it. Don't do it. But anyways, subsequently, Subby and I ran into the guy at a bar. And had the guy and I fought, he would have knocked me out probably one shot. But the fact that this guy knew now who I was and what I was willing to do, I told Subby, can you buy me a beer? And Subby's like, oh, I don't have the money, whatever, whatever. And this guy said, I got it. I'll buy you the beer. The act of him buying me the beer may have saved his life. I don't want to exaggerate. I mean, this is, 29 years ago. It's hard for me to put myself back. But I do remember thinking, aha, now he's deferring to me. And it was a psychological victory for me. So yes, that does irk me when people act that way, because I just think it's so cowardly.
It is.
In prison, when people used to act that way toward me, I would tell them, look, there's plenty of people around here that'll pull your card, that are willing to fight you. Why are you talking like that to me when you know that I'm not going to? Right? So I don't know. I don't even remember what question I was answering. Oh, I was addressing Subby.
Um, so my dad was a huge guy. He was like 6'6", and he was a big dude. And people always used to want to fight him, like when he was in school and when he was like later on. They always wanted to fight him because they wanted to prove themselves, because he was like this big man and he was a scary looking dude. Like he was terrifying. People always wanted to fight him, and he always say to them like, I'm not going to fight you, because if I fight you, I'm going to hurt you. And they would always try. And people want to pick fights with people who they think aren't going to fight back. If my dad had ever just like a person had come up to him and said, I want to fight you, and he'd socked them in the jaw, they would have stopped. But because they knew he was never going to do it, they could like fluff up their egos by saying,
Yes.
oh, look, I'm taking on this like massive dude and he's too scared to fight me. And it makes them feel good about themselves in some weird, stupid way.
Yeah.
It's like when you get into an argument with like when you get into a fight with people, and as you turn around to walk away, they throw like a parting shot, or if you're me, they throw a bottle at you as you're already walking away. Same thing.
Mr. Deagle asks, how did I decide that I was going to change? I just was sick of it. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to say it. I just was tired of my life. I was tired of doing drugs. I was tired of being dishonest, of not having good character, of the way I felt about myself. And I just wanted better. And I knew if I wanted, better, I had to be better.
Have you heard of the cattle prod moment?
What is that? Like where somebody prods you so that they get you to move? I don't know.
Yeah, so sort of. So a cattle prod moment is when you realize that the pain that you are causing yourself by continuing a behavior is worse than the pain that it would take to
Right.
change.
Right. So basically, you're talking, it's like a cost benefit assessment.
Yeah. But it's
Yes.
it's literally it's usually like a moment where you're like, if I
I
continue
don't
on
know.
like this, it's
I
the
think it
some
was more cumulative. For me, it wasn't just a moment, it was something that had been building. And it just, eventually I
Mm,
said, no, I got to make this change.
yeah.
Yeah, many people are in a similar situation and don't change. I don't have that answer. Ultimately, as human beings, we're self starters, and each person's got to make a decision for him or herself. And I made that decision, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that I had two friends in prison who also made it.
The people who are in similar situations and don't change, maybe the for them the pain of being the way they are, they think is easier to deal with than the pain they'd have to go through to change.
So
Change is tough.
change is tough. Stars for Amy says, I think the biggest and most important thing to heal, to know you have to change because you're damaging yourself. Those are, I'm going to separate those into two things. Yes, the second part absolutely applied to me. To know that I'm harming myself led me to change. The first part, though, is when applied to your average person, I would say is probably true for your average person that has suffered trauma, that yes, they do need to heal from the trauma that they've undergone. For criminals, it's a bit different and it's a bit tricky because if criminals view themselves as victims. And if you cater to that by telling them, oh, you need to heal, you're feeding something that you don't want to feed. You do not want to intimate to a criminal that it's not their fault, that it's not their decisions that they're making, that they're not responsible, that it's because they've suffered trauma. The bottom line is many, many people suffer trauma, and not all of them resort to crime or to hurting other people. And you cannot, with criminals, let that be an excuse. For your average person, I would say yes, they do need to heal, but I would say for anybody who's using their trauma to hurt other people, you are not justified in your behavior.
Yeah. It's weirdly something that you see a lot of in some online spaces of people using their trauma, their PTSD. And I'm so depressed, therefore, you have to behave in this way around me. You can't ever tell me about something that's happened to you because you're going to trigger my trauma. A lot of people use that, like, I need to heal. They use their trauma as sort of a way to control other people or to try to control other people.
Well, it can be very manipulative, right? I think that's what you're saying, and I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like, you're responsible. If I think that triggers are real, but I think if you're in a situation that's triggering for you, you need to fuck off and not say, well, no one else can do this because it upsets me.
I yes, I yes, just yes. No,
I
I yes. I agree. I was gonna say, and then I just said yes. I cut to the chase.
um did people fear you because they knew what you were willing to do?
Yes,
I feel like that's an easy question. If
it
if
is.
someone knows what you're gonna do. How tall are
Yeah,
you, by the way?
5'8".
Oh, you're still taller than me.
Yeah, I'm 5'8", 175 pounds probably.
Um, so I don't know if you wanna. We're
If
we're
you
at.
if you if you have another question, feel free to ask.
I have multiple more questions.
Okay, well, Danny, if you're in the chat, when are you going to be here to pick me up? That's what I need to know, and that will tell me when I need to wrap it up.
So one of the questions I think we've sort of like almost kind of touched on is, how do you identify when you're repeating a pattern from your upbringing without realizing it?
It's just it's self awareness. I mean, like you just look at this. It's not as if this just happens, right? I wake up and I say, "Oh, look at this! I'm repeating a pattern." It takes time. It takes effort. And I don't even know that it's necessary. I mean, for me, I'm inquisitive and curious, so I want to know everything about myself. But if you really want to change something, it's not even important to know I'm repeating a pattern from childhood. It's just necessary to know this behavior is causing me harm. How can I change it? Right? You don't need to dig into everything to understand that. If I am acting abusive towards people with my language, I don't need to understand that I'm doing that because that's what my parents did to me. I need to understand that this is counterproductive. I'm mistreating people that I care about and pushing them away. How do I stop this? That's what I need to know. I don't need to know the whole history. And that kind of ties in, I think, to the question from before about looking for the best option or acting quickly. You do not need to go through 12 years of psychoanalysis to understand that your behaviors are harming you. And if your behaviors are harming you, change them. Figure out how to change them. That may entail figuring out exactly why you do it, or it may not. But either way, the behavior needs to change.
I think a lot of this work of figuring out your values, like identifying limiting beliefs, identifying patterns that you've picked up from childhood, identifying bullshit that you've absorbed through osmosis, is a lot of looking at your behavior, how it impacts you, how it impacts the people around you, how that impacts you. It's a lot of like just being aware of what you do, what you think, why you think the way you think, why you do the things that you do.
Being conscious. Remember we talked the other day about living consciously? Be conscious. But you don't have to rush it. I don't want to make it seem, I'm 49 years old, right? And I was in a situation where I had an awful lot of time to do self-analysis, to not only read an abundance of books, but to journal, fill journals with my thoughts, analyze, reanalyze. You may not have that time to do it. It's time consuming no matter what. Don't rush. Live life and just make your best effort to be your best person, to do what's right on a daily basis. And the other stuff, just allow it to take the amount of time it needs to take, but at the same time, don't use that as an excuse for complacency.
I have one last question which sort of ties into that, and I think
Ask your last question.
I'm going to ask my last question. Okay, so
When you
how do
do
you
that, you sound like a Southern belle. I think you could pass for a Southern belle.
aren't they like blonde?
They don't have to be. I don't think so.
In the chat, are Southern belles blonde? Um, okay, so how do you balance sort of your how do you balance your present quality of life with working towards like a future that you want? Does this question make sense? It made sense in my head, but I'm
It
not
does,
sure
but
that it.
I want you to try to rephrase it a little bit so I make sure.
Okay, so see, I don't even know how I could do an American accent. Isn't that what I just did?
He wants you to do it again.
Shan't. Um, when you're trying to create a life that you want and you're working towards future values, it can be kind of easy to decrease your present quality of life in favor of a future that you're working towards.
So life is about value pursuit. Right? Just think about this. Imagine pursuing no values in life. You die, literally. Like, it's not a question. If you are still and you do nothing, you will die. So the fact of like my present quality of life, my present life is going to be about pursuing values, no matter what. I'm necessarily have to plan for the future. That's part of my current life. So there's not really a conflict. Now, if I get so enmeshed in what is my future going to be that I'm not conscious today, that's a problem. But if we are conscious, we're living consciously, we have to plan for the future. And part of living in the now is planning for the future. And when we're in the future, we'll be planning for another future. And that's part of living.
We're sort of, I think it was either Olive or Amy that said the other day that, they're doing side quests and they're impulsive and spontaneous. And I think that's what made me think of that question, because I think there is some black and white thinking where either you're working towards a future and you've sort of, that's all you're focusing on and you're ignoring your current life because you're trying to be a better person. Like, I'm not going to go out and have fun because I'm working towards being, a famous podcaster. I'm not going to go out with my friends because I need to sit and journal so that I can grow as a person.
Well, I think what you need to do is study Mr. Miyagi. Do you know Mr. Miyagi?
I do.
Do you know what he said? What he always counseled?
I,
Somebody in the chat. Somebody in the chat. What did Mr. Miyagi always counsel that is especially relevant right here? And Amy, you should not be talking to your mom while you're watching the show. You should be paying attention to what we're discussing. Does nobody know what Mr. Miyagi counseled all the time?
See, someone's gonna say it, and I'm gonna go, oh right.
Just Google it. Google it. It'll be better. It'd be better for the pop if you Google it and find out. What was the main thing he always counseled? This is gonna be great.
Better learn balance?
Balance. Yes. Balance. Not paint the fence. Balance.
Wax on, wax off?
Right? If you spend never mind. If you spend all your time focused on right now, right, you're going to destroy your future. If you spend all your time focused on the future, you're not going to live now. Balance, Persephone son. Balance.
Horrible. I agree. It's about balance. But also I do think some of the people in the audience are going to be starting from a much further back place than someone who spent years studying.
I think that there's probably very few people in the audience who will be starting from a place farther back than where I started. So
I didn't say that.
I'm saying it. No, Persephone, I'm saying it. Don't panic. Zzz. Well, you could do that too. Whatever.
No.
But the point is that anybody can do this. Anybody can make changes for the better. Small changes, big changes, whatever you want. Everybody is capable that's got an intact brain. You're capable of improving yourself. You're capable of improving your life. And we are here to help you do it. I firmly recommend that you go and you subscribe to the Capitalist Corner channel on YouTube. You subscribe to that. This show is a part of it. We are on that channel. We are here every day at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 Pacific. We have the Everyday Ethics Patreon at patreon.com/everydayethics. You do need to subscribe. We need the subscribers. And also like and share the show if you've enjoyed our conversation today. We will be here again tomorrow at 2:30. Maybe we'll have another day of Persephone asking me questions. I think the conversation went very, very well.
I still have a few, and then I have some additional notes. Please go and listen to the episodes that are available on Spotify, both the Capitalist Corner and Everyday Ethics. Listen, subscribe on Spotify, like, rate the show. And next weekend on the Everyday Ethics Patreon, we are going to be doing a group call. So it'll be a group Zoom call if you want to come and ask questions in person. Um, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So subscribe on the Everyday Ethics Patreon.
Thank you, everybody. We will be back tomorrow. But until then, remember, be ethical.